Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
So today we're looking at a really interesting conversation. It was between Tara Palmeri and Rikki Schlott.
Yeah, Palmeri, the millennial commentator, and Schlott, bringing that Gen Z perspective, is pretty insightful stuff.
Definitely. And that conversation is, well, it's our main source material for this deep dive.
Exactly. So the plan is to pull out their key insights, right? About Gen Z politics, Trump's future, that whole university feud.
And yeah, what they see coming down the pike election-wise.
Let's jump in.
Okay, so first up, Gen Z and Donald Trump. Rikki Schlott, she pushed back pretty hard on the idea that Gen Z is all in on Trump.
Yeah, that was a big point early on. She highlighted this significant split within the generation.
The split how?
Well, specifically between Gen Z men and women. She suggested the men are, well, noticeably more open to Trump.
Okay.
Whereas Gen Z women, maybe his toughest crowd in that age group. So definitely not a monolith.
Right, not monolithic at all. And then there was this pattern they both noticed, this sort of rapid disillusionment. It happened with Biden, and it happened with Trump, too, among Gen Z.
Yeah, it's like initial support or maybe optimism, and then pretty quickly the approval ratings dip once they're actually in office.
It does suggest a kind of cycle, doesn't it? Hope, that a more critical look.
Definitely. And it wasn't just politicians. They mentioned Elon Musk, too, remember?
Oh, right. His approval also took a hit with Gen Z. That seemed, well, surprising.
It did, especially after he got really into Dogecoin.
Yeah, what was the thinking there? Why the drop?
Well, Schlott floated the idea that maybe some young people saw it negatively, like maybe impacting future job stuff or, financial stability somehow.
So it suggests their support isn't just about ideology. It's tied to perceived real-world impact.
Seems like it. It points to them maybe taking evidence at face value when looking at leaders.
Okay. And this ties into another point Schlott made about a certain segment of young men.
The reactionary group.
Yeah, exactly. Possibly influenced by, lockdown experiences. Feeling restricted.
Oh. And wanting to push back, yeah. Which kind of connects to that whole online Trump fanboy thing.
Right, the very vocal supporters online. But Palmeri questioned how long that lasts, didn't she?
She did. She mentioned that example of influencers getting fed misleading documents about Epstein.
Yeah, it makes you wonder about the foundation of that support. Is it solid or...
Or maybe more about the performance of it. Because for some, Schlott argued, supporting Trump is about rebellion.
like sticking it to the establishment.
Exactly. And the mega app becomes this symbol, especially on college campuses, against what they see as progressive dominance.
A kind of counterculture statement almost.
Yeah. And Schlott even described some of these young male supporters as, ride or die.
Meaning they feel too invested to back down, even if policies hurt them.
Pretty much. That they've gone so far out on that limb they can't or won't climb back.
But then Palmeri brought up something interesting, these permission structures.
Right, like with Ben Shapiro maybe criticizing tariffs now.
So the idea is if someone they respect changes their stance.
It gives others permission to rethink their own position without feeling like they're betraying the cause.
Exactly. It opens a door maybe for some young conservatives to move away from Trump, especially if things like tariffs or, say, crypto losses start hitting their wallets.
Yeah, that financial angle is key. And there's a generational thing there too, right?
How so?
Well, older voters might feel tariff impacts more directly with bigger portfolios maybe. Younger people, less savings. Maybe it feels more abstract.
For a while, anyway. Until it's not abstract anymore.
True. But then you get that really weird rhetoric Schlott mentioned.
Oh, the idea that stock market losses for the rich somehow help the poor.
Yeah. I mean, that just shows a pretty significant misunderstanding of basic economics, doesn't it?
It really does. Okay, let's shift gears. Trump versus the universities. That's another big friction point they discussed.
Definitely. Schlott seemed genuinely taken aback by Columbia.
With their Middle Eastern Studies department.
Yeah.
She saw it as caving too quickly.
Yeah, like a real threat to academic freedom, which contrasted sharply with Princeton's president.
Who signaled they'd resist those kinds of demands.
Exactly.
Right.
Which brings up the whole point of endowments, right?
What are these huge endowments for, if not to protect academic independence in moments like these?
Precisely. Otherwise, you worry that less wealthy institutions might just
fold quickly, as Schlott put it, just to keep the federal money flowing.
It's a real concern.
Yeah.
And Palmeri mentioned universities hiring lobbyists connected to Trump.
Yeah, like trying to broker deals behind the scenes.
Yeah.
instead of outright fighting or folding.
It shows the kind of tightrope these places are walking, trying to navigate the politics while, keeping the lights on.
But it's not just about money, is it? They also talked about the campus climate itself.
Right. Concerns about bias, maybe even indoctrination, and the need for spaces where conservative students feel they can actually speak up.
And the importance of different perspectives, generally geographic, socioeconomic, not just political.
Yeah, and both Palmeri and Schlott shared their own experiences, feeling like the different voice in largely liberal college environments.
Which gives weight to the critique, even if you disagree with the Trump administration's tactics.
Exactly. Schlott seemed to be saying, look, there are valid criticisms of universities, but these methods feel authoritarian.
And counterproductive, maybe, if the goal is actually free speech and diverse thought.
Right. And Palmeri pointed out the hypocrisy.
Because the administration previously tied funding to protecting free speech.
Yeah. And now using funding as a lever in a way that feels coercive to some. It's that classic thing, extreme actions provoke strong reactions.
So where does this all lead? What about their predictions? Midterms, for instance.
The general feeling seemed to be Republicans probably lose House seats.
And the extent of those losses tied heavily to tariffs.
Yeah, how badly those tariffs bite seem like the key variable.
Plus, as Schlott noted, younger voters are just less reliable in midterms.
Right. Older voters who might feel tariffs more, they're more likely to actually turn out.
And then there's the internal Republican stuff. Disagreements over tariffs, even within the party, within the administration.
Yeah, and figures like Elon Musk criticizing them, too. That potentially weakens Trump's hand.
But there's still that fear factor, right? Republicans worried about being primaried if they cross Trump.
Oh, absolutely. That seems to keep a lot of people in line, even if they disagree privately.
It makes predicting tricky. And Palmeri asked, could the Democrats face a similar issue?
Like a move too far left, leading to unelectable candidates?
Yeah, the sort of mirroring effect. It's a valid question for both sides, I think.
Definitely. Then there was the grade for Trump's first, 100 days back.
Schlott suggested a D+ or C. That's pretty low.
Her reasoning was striking, though, that his actions this time are basically making the worst fears from his first term come true.
Like he's living up to the hyperbole.
Almost intentionally, yeah. Fulfilling those prophecies, in a way.
Which leads to the biggest question. The third term.
Uh-huh. Both Palmeri and Schlott seemed convinced he'll try it, or at least explore it.
And they both sounded pretty alarmed by that prospect.
Understandably. Palmeri laid out the constitutional hurdles needing 2/3 in both houses to amend the Constitution.
Which seems, well, incredibly unlikely right now.
Very unlikely. So the worry becomes, how else might he try it?
Invoking national emergencies, war powers, something like that.
That seemed to be the concern, using executive power to bypass the constitutional limits, maybe finding some legally dubious justification.
Palmeri even mentioned the Alien and Sedition Acts as a kind of historical cautionary tale.
Yeah, but executive overreach in supposed crisis times. The consensus seemed to be his exit, whenever it happens, won't be quiet.
No, likely contentious. And what about who comes after Trump within that movement?
There was definitely skepticism about J.D. Vance.
Palmeri suggested he might just be a placeholder.
Yeah, floated that idea. Maybe a placeholder for Donald Trump Jr., perhaps.
Interesting speculation.
So, wrapping this all up, the key takeaways from their chat seem to be...
Okay, let's recap.
Gen Z. Much more complex politically than often portrayed. Diverse views, quick to judge leaders once they're in power.
Right. And Trump's influence, while strong, isn't absolute. Policy issues like tariffs, internal dissent, those are real challenges.
Definitely. Universities are caught in a tough spot balancing money, politics, and academic freedom.
And the future. Still very much up in the air. Economic wins, generational politics, lots of moving parts.
So hopefully this deep dive has given our listeners a clearer, more nuanced picture of all that.
Yeah, getting beyond just the headlines.
And maybe leaves us with a final thought to chew on.
Go for it.
Given everything we've discussed about the tension between, the White House and higher education, what are the long-term risks?
For academic freedom.
Right.
For just pursuing knowledge in such a polarized time.
Exactly. What does that look like down the road?
That's definitely something to ponder. Worth keeping an eye on.
For sure. Maybe do some digging into tariff impacts or the history of those big university endowments.
Good suggestions. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.